should be other than you are at a given moment in time. And I think the thing is, you can send people after the manifestations of that, the kind of the consequences of that basic assumption. And they can chase after individual instances of it and never see the basic underlying idea that's causing them problems. Because as long as I have that idea, that it's this basic belief that it's possible, on the one end, that it's possible for me to need to be other than I am at a given moment in time, and then kind of moving it forward, that it's likely that I need to be, right? I mean, because if your parents 7 times out of 10 criticized you for what you were doing, your brain begins to pick up, more likely than not, I'm fucking something up, right, in an unacceptable way. And I think it's a really interesting thing that when your parents are, in a sense, your whole world, or at least your whole kind of authority structure, that when they have a problem with what you're doing as a kid, you kind of interpret that as what I'm doing is a problem. It's not the same. You know what I mean? But if you grow out of the house environment and you don't realize kind of what's going on, you carry that assumption that about 7 times out of 10, there's something I'm doing that's wrong. And I don't mean something that you're doing that could be better. I mean, there's something that's existentially not okay. Because like when your parents rebuke you, there's a feeling in a sense that reality is rebuking you. It's like, no, 1 or 2 individual people were rebuking you. And, the chances that they either were an idiot or an asshole or traumatized themselves or idiosyncratic or overly strict or well-meaning but misguided, I mean, the chances that they were one or perhaps some combination of, and not unlikely all of those things, fairly high, right? And so if you form kind of your basic relationship to reality on kind of the template of your parents and their patterns of rejecting, their patterns of rejecting you or of conditionally accepting you or finding fault with you, whatever, you're probably going to have a fucked up relationship with reality, And so on the one end, I think like in the philosophical realm, let's examine closely this idea that it's even possible for you to need to be other than you are at a given moment in time. Or and I'm talking about like right now, you're the way that you are. Do you have to have been other than that in order to now begin moving in the direction that you want to go, right? It's not about, just cultivating apathy to make yourself content. It's about harnessing your capacity to change by recognizing that an important component of that is realizing that it's okay that you're the way that you are right now. That's a really important kind of part of changing. I mean, you have to sort of be okay with the fact that you're on Earth to be willing to build a launch pad that's going to shoot you into space. If you're so upset about the fact that you're on Earth that you're just depressed and in your mom's basement, you're probably not going to get funding, you know what I'm saying, to build a spaceship to shoot you somewhere else. And so, one, philosophically, it doesn't even fucking make any sense, this idea that I must be other than I am. And then you say, okay, well, then this whole idea that it's likely that I am doing something wrong, or it's likely that there's something about me that must be other than it is, like must have been other than it was a second ago. There's that kind of in the hole, behind the 8 ball, the report was due yesterday, you didn't turn it in, there's no extensions, you're failing the class, you're getting kicked out of school, you're fucked, your life is over. That whole feeling. And then there's, even beyond that, there's a lot of people that exist in a realm where it's not just likely, there's no question. I'm messing something up. I'm doing something wrong. There are things that are fundamentally wrong with me. And these are the people who, if they make money, if they have a significant other that really loves them, they have friends that think they're great, they have a family that's supportive. No, they don't really, you know what I mean? I don't deserve this, I don't deserve. So they're certain of an absurdity. And to me, the whole thing is I want to kind of close the door on absurdities. I want to get you to the point where you can't even begin to abide any argument or any line of thinking or any anxiety process that involves the assumption or the idea that it's possible for you to need to be other than you are. I want you to be unable to accept that. I want you to kind of reject that out of hand, just intuitively, kind of a visceral neurological level. Doesn't even compute, corrupt, fruit of the poisonous tree, garbage in, garbage out, not going to worry about it, right? You know what I mean? But there's also people who not only are open to that possibility, but think that it's a probability. And then there's also people who think that it's a certainty. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And getting out of that is a really important thing. And examining, I think, just how many of your, not just like your problems out here, not the things that you think are problems, but also the things that are your real problems that you've never even noticed because of your preoccupation with those problems. apparent problems, how much of those deep underlying things are founded upon, built upon these misunderstandings of reality, right? These assumptions that say it's possible for you to need to be other than you are at a given moment in time in order to become who you want to be moving forward, And if you can begin to root that out, you'll save yourself like a lot of conversations with people, because you won't have to say, well, what about this? Well, what about that? Well, like if you just keep harping on those basic ideas, when those basic ideas get installed, or alternatively, when those shitty ideas get rooted out, the person will begin to catch themselves and they'll say, wait a minute, this is an example of assuming that I need to be, must have been, need to have been other than I am or was at a given moment in time. And then they can just throw the whole thing out. Like if you can convince somebody that anything that person says is a fucking lie, it doesn't matter what they say. If they say, not everything I say is a lie, if you've really convinced them that everything that person says is a lie, they're going to recognize that's a lie. Even meta it's going to be so clear. And I think that's one of those things too, is like driving home those points and making it in the beginning just obvious to the person. Listen, you don't have to be able to throw this stuff out before you're ready to. I just want you to begin to recognize the extent to which your current experience of reality is flowing from, or contingent upon, or hooked up to a grid, right? That the center point of which is this assumption that it's possible for me to need to be other than I am. It's probable that I would need to be other than, or that it's absolutely true the case, And if you just begin to notice, goddamn, 95% of my problems, really, if I were to remove that assumption, if I were to get myself to a point, either through a psychedelic experience or an awareness challenge, I don't care what you do, you know what I mean? I mean, maybe you got shocked and all of a sudden things got clear to you. It doesn't matter. If at some point, in some way, I divorced myself from this idea or I rejected this idea, or became immune to this idea that it was possible for me to need to be other than I am at a given moment in time, it would not be possible for me to be stuck in the way I'm currently stuck. It would not be possible for me to have a problem with the fact that I have the problems that I have, and to therefore be incapable of engaging resourcefully with those problems in a way that actually solves them. That's the thing, is people have problems with the fact that they have the problems that they do, and that prevents them usually from solving the problems that they think they have. And that's, again, coming back to that whole swagger thing. If you're in debt, you need to just kind of go, like after an enormous Thanksgiving meal, and you just sort of unbutton your pants, like, the person that's like just so comfortable with themselves, and they're just like, ugh, and they gorge themselves, and they just kind of undo their pants and just kind of sit back in the chair. Like, you need to have that attitude with regard to your problems, because the time to recognize that you don't need to eat that much is before you eat it. But once you've eaten it and your abdomen is distended and swelling out, it doesn't make any sense to me to then be afraid to unbuckle your pants. You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, maybe next time you'll remember. So the problems that you have currently, maybe there are things you could have done differently that would have prevented those things. But you've already ingested those problems. You already overate. You're where you are. At this point, the key is to be comfortable, unbuckling your existential pants, relaxing a little bit, saying, well, here I am. I just stuffed myself. Here I am. Here are the problems that I have, and relaxing enough so that you can comfortably digest that stuff and move on. You know what I'm talking about? Mm-hmm. That's an essential thing, because shit's gonna happen. Like, you're gonna embarrass yourself, you're gonna fail, you're gonna hurt people that are important to you inadvertently, you're gonna fail to help people in ways that perhaps you could have helped them. Like, shit's gonna happen. You know what I mean? And like, because we have this ability to look into the past and to run kind of counterfactual things, or look into the future and see how bad things can happen and imagine different things we could do to make it less likely or impossible for those things to happen, you're gonna have to deal with the reality, or and the experience of things happening that you don't want, and you having the ability to say, I could have had things happen differently. Mm-hmm. And you're gonna have to deal with there's like, really ugly animals, or deformed trees or plant life that don't have a problem with the fact that they look the way that they do, because they don't contemplate the possibility of different. And I think that if you have that skill, it's useful, because you can look at yourself and not like what you see, and realize it's possible to be different. But in order to look at yourself and not like what you see, you need to at some point be able to close that loop and say, I don't like it. I've acknowledged I don't like it. I know I don't like it. I don't need to keep I don't need to keep recreating the feeling that lets me know I don't like who I am now. I did it once. I've noted it. Note to self, I don't like my financial situation. Note to self, I don't like being alone. Note to self, I don't like weighing 700 pounds. Once you've felt that feeling once and you've gotten the message, which is to say, room for improvement here, there's no reason to feel that feeling again. You know, you want to immediately then, I think, build the feeling of, oh boy, here's what I want, and here I am heading in the direction of that. That feels good. It doesn't make any sense to me to, like, you know, feel it over and over and over again just for the hell of it. And I think that that's one of those things, is that constantly feeling bad about what is tends to siphon off energy that could be used to deliberately create what can be, the version of what can be that you would like to have in your life. You know what I'm saying? Like, but you have to be able to recognize that's what's happening. And then there has to be permission to stop doing it. And sometimes permission's not even enough. Sometimes what the person needs is to recognize you're resisting being the same, not just as an ineffective strategy. So you're resisting being the way that you are is not just an ineffective strategy for changing. It is not just an obstacle to changing. It is it is sort of an alternative to changing. It is incompatible with changing, right? And so if some aspect of your life is bad enough or undesirable enough for you to make yourself feel bad about it, then it's also bad enough and undesirable enough for you to stop feeling bad about it so that you can do something to actually change it. And that's the sort of, right?
Left.
Oh, really? That's, you know what I mean? And then that's the thing that I think people, because when you're trying to get people, the thing is, when you're trying to get people to stop doing things that are preventing them from getting what they want, the reason they tend to resist that is because they're afraid that if they stop doing the things that are preventing them from getting what they want, that they're not going to get what they want. And if you're having a hard time convincing people to start doing things that they need to do in order to get what they want, very often starting those things that they need to do to get what they want involves stopping doing the things that are preventing them from getting what they want. Because the way that the things that you're doing that are preventing you from getting what you want prevent you from getting what you want is that they interfere with you doing the things that you would need to do in order to get what you want, right? You have to, I think, make a really kind of airtight case for people that they can feel in kind of just the depths of their reality, you know, because there's a sensation inside. There's not often a conversation that says, well, if I don't beat myself up, I won't change. Usually that's not how it works. Usually there's a feeling inside that is sort of interpreted by the semi-conscious mind as saying, well, you better feel this way because this is unacceptable. And then, like, that's all that's there. But then the underlying kind of presuppositions of that somatic communication is, if you don't feel bad about this thing that's not acceptable, this thing's not going to change, and it can't not change. In fact, it can't even be the way that it is now. Look how bad you are. And then they're just propelled in the wrong direction by a bad feeling. And I think the thing is, you have to show somebody that the things that they're doing to prevent what they don't want, those things are creating what they don't want. And the things that they're doing to prevent what they don't want are preventing them actually from doing things that would enable the possibility and make real the things that they do want. And you have to sew everything up because they're going to go, yes, but. And if that yes, but is not sewn up in that conversation, and you can't address it once they've said it, because if you address it once they've said it, they go, oh, he's just saying that. You have to address it beforehand, because then they're going to go, yes, but. And you're going to go, no, you can't say yes, but to me, because I addressed that already. That's part of this, and you agreed to that. You're right? And they have to be, it's got to be basically a straitjacket of resourceful response. You have to make it, I mean, you have to figure out, how does a lunatic hurt themselves? How does a lunatic get out of a straitjacket so that they can hurt themselves? And then you have to make a straitjacket that accommodates all those things and keeps them trapped in doing what works. You know, because if you can trap somebody in doing what works, really all you've done is you've liberated them from doing what doesn't work. But it's just so natural, you know? Doing what doesn't work is just so natural that it doesn't feel like bondage, even though it is, because they're the chains that are kind of chosen, you know what I mean? But they're still limiting the person. And so I think that you want to accommodate the whole thing. You want to put that entire unresourceful thing, we're going right up here. You want to put that entire unresourceful process in a kind of resourceful package that's heading in the right direction. You know what I mean? And that's another thing too, is make it so that they can. And that's kind of the principle of utilization. Make it so that they can fuck up and still have that be part of the process. You can fuck up. You're just not allowed to feel bad about it. You can feel bad about fucking up. You're just not allowed to feel bad about that. You can feel bad about the fact that you felt bad about the fact that you fucked up. That's fine. Just notice that you're doing it and see it for what it is. Oh, you didn't see it? Well, do you see now that you didn't see it? Okay, well, you're seeing that. That's great. And you get them to that point where they're kind of in this, you know, inescapable okayness.
Yep.
So that it's kind of like Russian, like nesting dolls, right? Of fine, we can work with this. Fine, we can work with this. Because that's the attitude that most kids have. Fine, we can work with this. And the parents say, no, no, no. You've made one too many mistakes now, and now you're grounded. You've hit that threshold where you can't undo it. And now you've just got to pay the bad feeling price. You know what I'm saying?
Right.
And people then get used to that constantly, and they do it all the time. I mean, sometimes that's true. You know, if you're so maladjusted that you murder someone and you're in prison, you know, there's an element of truth to the fact that you kind of had a threshold moment there, right? But we do it to ourselves constantly in our mind every time we mess up. I mean, we make these little tentative deals with ourselves that says, okay, I mean, and it's like making a deal with the devil. You don't make a deal with yourself. You just say, fuck that. I'm going to try it and see what happens. I'm not going to sign a contract that says if I try to change and I don't change, I then have to feel bad. Who am I even making that deal with? It's just me. I'm the boss of me. You know what I'm saying? I can try something. I can try a diet. I can make a decision that says I want to be nicer to you. And then I can mess up 100 times, and I don't have to feel bad.
Yep.
And I'm not going to allow myself to convince myself that I do have to feel bad, because all it's going to do is teach me to associate experiments and efforts to change with the bad feeling of failing, which is a great way to discourage me from doing it. You know,